Lee, in your bio, you say that the writers that you've seen make it or have success often know their strengths and weaknesses, are very self-aware. That's great, but who do they actually trust to tell them the truth about that? Because so many people will say, oh, you're so wonderful, but there's like a hidden agenda, and then there's vice versa. There's sort of the poisonous playmates, as Julia Cameron calls them.
You have to find the people that you trust. I mean, listen, the reality is that this is a two-sided coin. On one side, nobody likes confrontation. Nobody wants to be the bad friend that told you that, you know, you stink, you sweat too much. So change your, like, nobody wants to have those conversations about what doesn't work, because they want to be your friends and they want to have wine with you and they want to kick back and they don't want the weight of they said something uncomfortable to you. On the other end, you have the people who are not at your level, who just want to kind of hang on and see where you're going and everything you do is great and brilliant and fantastic. It really is a hunch. It really is about finding the people that you trust to tell you the good and bad. I generally don't, and this is me, and this is not politically correct, I find that you can't be on the side of the writer and the side of the sale at the same time, which is why I work the way that I work. Because if I'm invested in selling something, my first priority stops being the writer and it starts being putting money in my bank, right? So I think that you have to find people whose job is to be honest with you. It used to be managers that were a lot more hands-on with creative development, career development, but because the business model changed so aggressively in 2008 after the 2008 strike, very few still have that luxury. You know, managers used to have a small roster of 15, 20 people. Now I see many of my friends in management who used to have small rosters suddenly with 30, 40, 50 clients, because now it takes twice the time to break a writer or sell a script for half the money. So you have to load your roster if you want to keep making the same money that you did. So you have to find people who are not invested in necessarily in making money off of you, but are invested in your long-term best interest, who will be honest with you, who are not competing with you. Competition element is always tough, because the moment you have competition, there inevitably and subconsciously are other emotions that come into play that may taint why someone is saying something. So you really do have to find your team that you can always go back to. I had a writer years ago who wrote a script that had a lot of heat on it, and he was signed by CAA, and I kept telling him, you have to get a manager. You have to get somebody who's on your side who'll give it to you straight. I wasn't coaching at that time yet, but you know, he came to me through Script Shark, which I was running for 6.5 years. We became quite friendly. I gave him some advice, and my advice was find somebody on your side, not on the side of selling the script. Ultimately, the script fizzled out, and he fizzled out in such a drastic and dramatic fashion. He made such mistakes that nobody at the big agency that signed him was going to stop and train him on it, or talk him through it, or consider the option, or say, don't you ever freaking say that. You know, he was effectively put on stage to perform, didn't know how to perform, thought that he did, which was a huge mistake. And so everything fizzled. If he had somebody in his ear who was coaching him, who was training him, who knew what the hell they were talking about, that mistake wouldn't have happened. But he was, you know, his movie or his screenplay that was very much the talk of the town disappeared overnight. He fizzled and was dropped by the agency from one day to the next, based on very simple mistakes that the writer made, that had he had somebody invested in him and not in just the money, would have been different.